على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلية إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وأتم التسليم على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We are coming close to the end of the month of Shawwal, and just a few days ago was the martyrdom anniversary of our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Condolences to the Shia Ummah and to Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajjalallah Ta'ala Farajuhu Sharif, on the sad occasion. I thought it would be a good idea for us to look into the significance of al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari, the school of thought that we are proudly a part of. As I say every program, please make sure that you keep your mobile phones away. I don't want to see anyone with their mobile phones in their hands. And of course, if I can't see you, that means you can't see me. Ali, move from where you are. Something that we probably tend to overlook is how important it is for us to strengthen and fortify our aqidah, our faith, our belief. In a lot of cases, because we are born into a Shi'i family, we tend to take things for granted. We tend to overlook some of the important things that really make up who we are as far as our Shi'i identity. And in some cases, when someone poses a certain question or someone throws a misconception, asks you something, because we haven't put any effort in learning the foundations of our faith, our belief, our affiliation to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, we might not have an adequate answer. And that's why we all know as Muslims that studying usul ad-din is wajib individually upon each and every person. We need to invest in as much time and effort in learning about the foundations of our religion. And of course, Friday night program here in the Musalla is a golden opportunity for that. But it's not going to be enough 40-45 minutes a week. No, you need to make sure that you do your own reading, your watching of lectures and programs and things like that. But you also need to make sure that you're getting proper information as well. There are a lot of people out there who might not be on the right path, who might have a different kind of understanding. We all know that Islam is one, but there are different interpretations of Islam. We all know that the Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that my ummah will be divided into 73 groups and only one of them will end up in heaven. How confident are you that you are on that right path? How confident are you that you are in following the correct sect? And that's why it is really, really important for us to put aside our stubborn ways, for us to think with an open mind, to think critically. Just because you were born into a certain family, that does not mean that you have to stay that way. Guidance comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also from you making sure that you have a justification, an answer to each and every situation that you are faced as far as your faith is concerned. Yes, there might be certain, technical things that you might not really know of, but for us, we need to at least try to have the bare minimum of information. So when we pose this question of why are you a follower of al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari, there are different madhahib out there, there are different sects out there. Why do you follow the sect or the Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq school of thought? And by the way, that's why they say we are referred to as al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari, because during the time of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, the Shi'i Madhhab, the Shi'i school of thought flourished. And he pretty much established the foundations of the jurisprudence, the legislation, the ahkam, expanding it as much as he could, because of the time that he was in was a little bit of an unstable kind of time, the falling of Bani Umayyah and the rise of Bani Abbas. So Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, they used this to their advantage. Not to say that they weren't wronged or they weren't oppressed, they certainly were in a lot of cases. Especially, we all know that they ultimately ended up being martyred as well. If you were to be asked, okay, well, we know that Islam is divided into Sunni and Shia, but what about Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, Zaydi, Ismaili, this and that? Well, that's why we have to make two different categories. One is called the theological sects, and the other is called the fiqhi or the jurisprudential sects. And we need to know at least a little bit about them. For example, there are two main theological sects in Sunni Islam, the Mu'tazila and the Asha'ira. As for the Shia, there are more than that. You've got, for example, the Alawis, you've got the Zaydis, you've got the Ismailis, you've got the Waqifis, you've got the Fatahis. Fatahis are extinct, and the Waqifis are also extinct, but there are a lot of Zaydis, especially in Yemen. There are a lot of Ismailis around. And then, of course, you have what we are, who we are, and that is the Ithna Asharis, the 12 Imams, who we believe in the 12 Imams, right? These are the theological groups. Of course, there's also the Abadis. They're also Muslim. The Abadis are an offshoot of the Khawarij, and they live predominantly in Oman, right? Then we have the jurisprudential groups as well. The jurisprudential groups are, in the Sunnis, there are four main groups: Hanbali, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanafi. For the Shia, as far as fiqh is concerned, there are two groups: the Usulis, who are us, and then we have Akhbaris. To be very, very quick, I don't want to confuse you, but the difference between the Usulis and the Akhbaris are the Akhbaris don't believe in the concept of ijtihad and following a marja' taqleed, whereas we, the Usulis, do. For us, it's our duty to make sure that we follow the highest ranking scholar of our time. The highest ranking scholar, the most knowledgeable scholar of our time, we refer back to him to receive, to get our ahkam and our laws. Yes, there are people who find, places here and there that they want to follow this marja' or that person or this person because he's got a nice beard, or because he's on television a lot, or because he's got easy fatwas or things like that. And that's why the topic of taqleed is really, really important. And we all need to make sure that we are doing the right thing by following the correct marja' taqleed. Shout out to our brother in Turkey. Following the right marja' taqleed. Okay. As for what does the word madhhab mean? Madhhab means the point of reference. Dhahaba, dhihab, means who you are going to, who you are referring back to, we could say. So madhhab basically means the point of reference in who you are referring back to, as far as, in the technical meaning, as far as the ahkam, as far as your wajib, your haram, your mustahab, your makruh, your mubah, these things. Because for you as a Muslim, every single thing that you do needs to fall under one of these 5 categories. Everything you do, whether you're studying, whether you're working, whether you're eating, what it is that you're wearing, whatever it is, it needs to fall under one of these 5 categories, right? And so madhhab doesn't really mean sect. It means jurisprudential school of thought, right? Now, of course, this basically means that there has been an evolving in different understandings, in different interpretations of madhahib. And as we all know, sorry, I've got this all mixed up a little bit. As we all know, as far as the Sunni Madhahib are concerned, there are 4 of them, 4 main Sunni Madhahib. You've got the Hanafis, and you've got the Malikis, and you've got the Shafi'is, and you've got the Hanbalis. Question: do Sunnis choose which one of them, or are they pretty much born into it, or does it depend on their region, where they lived, where they're from? For example, if they're from North Africa, then they usually are a part of this madhab. If they're from India, subcontinent, they're a part of that madhab. If they're from the Middle East, they're a part of this madhab. Mathalan, right? And you can see this, that in so-and-so country, the dominating madhab is al-Madhhab al-Shafi'i or al-Madhhab al-Hanafi, for example, right? It's very rare where you find a Sunni who knows which madhab. It's very rare where you find a Sunni who says, I follow this madhab by choice, right? Not saying that there's none, but in general, this is usually how it is. It's usually a family-oriented kind of thing, right? Or a background kind of thing. The 4 madhahib came about as an agreement, of course, mainly political kind of agreements, where we are going to restrict the madhahib, the Muslims, in following one of these 4 madhahib. But, of course, as you can see, there were many other madhahib as well. Many other. These are the main ones that I have written here. And each one of them is what they refer to as an imam in fiqh, right? Al-Imam al-Awza'i, Sufyan al-Thawri, all of these others that are very famous in the Sunni world. This is why Al-Imam al-Suyuti, he has a saying that is as follows: Al-Madhahib fi hadhihi al-millat al-sharifa, that the madhahib in our, of course, religion is limited, is restricted. They are restricted to 4. However, there are many that cannot be counted, the number of course, imams and the number of people who were from the Sahaba or from the Tabi'een or the Tabi'een of the Tabi'een. You can't count them, that number, who, of course, had their own followers. So basically the case was that a certain Sunni alim, right, felt it upon himself that I am, of course, independent in my understanding of the ahkam and the rulings of the sharia, and he started to have followers under him, and that became its own madhhab. That became its own madhhab. But then, of course, it became very limited, restricted to 4. We also have offshoots as well. For example, the Salafiyya, the Wahhabiyya, who, are followers of Ibn Taymiyyah, and of course, they believe that he was an imam on his own. And even though they say, okay, well, we follow the original madhab and things like that, but of course, they have fundamental differences as well. And of course, I've mentioned here the Ibadi sect also. This is why you've got some of these imams who were imams in certain regions, and people who were living in those regions started to follow these particular imams. So that is in regards to the Sunni Madhahib, which we can say there are many of them. There were many of them, but then it became restricted to 4 Madhahib. As for 12 Shia Islam, it is, of course, one Madhhab, al-Madhhab al-Shi'i al-Ja'fari, and of course it goes back to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. As far as the overall fiqh methodology is concerned, we're not saying that, what about the other imams? No, because you're called a Shi'i, you're also called a Imami, you're also called a Ithna Ashari, you're also called a Ja'fari. Unfortunately, you've got some ignorant people who say, oh, there are 3 types of Shia. One is the Imamis, the other are the Ja'faris, and the others are the, for example, Shia, and things like that. I've heard this very commonly said, unfortunately, right? But for us, it's all the same. Shi'i, you can replace that word with Imami. It's a synonym. Or who remembers the cinnamon challenge in camp? Hassan, you remember? Of course, when it does come to, as I said, when it does come to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, we can say that maybe up to 60% of our ahadith in ahkam, in laws, in jurisprudence, in fiqh matters, go back to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhim salam. That's why their role was very, very important for us. Coming back to, of course, who were these 4 imams, Abu Hanifa and Anas ibn Malik and al-Shafi'i and Ibn Hanbal. Now, as far as Abu Hanifa is concerned, we know that there's a famous statement that was said by Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man. If you've been to Ziyara and you've been to al-Kadhimain alayhimus salam, on this side of the bridge is the qabr, the masjid, and the resting place of Abu Hanifa. And the only place that divides between Al-Kadhimiyya and that area is a bridge, right? Jisr al-A'imma. Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, he says, because he was a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. If it wasn't for the 2 years, al-Nu'man, yani Abu Hanifa, would have perished. Where's Nisar? Yeah. Mentally, or what's wrong, Mehdi? لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. If it wasn't for these 2 years, al-Nu'man, Abu Hanifa, would have perished. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, in any given time, he would have literally thousands of students under his minbar, under his pulpit, alaykum salam, under his pulpit, delivering his durus and his lectures, it is said that over 3,000 people in al-Madinah al-Munawwara would say, حدثني Ja'far ibn Muhammad alayhim as-salam. That's the number of people that were studying under Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And Abu Hanifa was one of them. And Malik ibn Anas was another student of Imam al-Sadiq. Then we have al-Shafi'i, who was a student of Imam al-Sadiq. And then we have Ibn Hanbal, who was a student of the student. So either they were students, either direct students, or through one or through two mediums, the students of Imam al-Sadiq. Unfortunately, they did not stay loyal to their teacher. Especially Abu Hanifa. Here there's a hadith, and there's a few of them, where how it criticizes Abu Hanifa, where he would say, Abu Hanifa would say, قال علي وقلت so and so. قال so and so وقلت so and so. So he would always try to somehow give an opinion that would be different to that of what mainstream Muslims believed in, even in that time. There's a story, now whether this is authentic or not, where it is said that he had said that I opposed Ja'far ibn Muhammad in everything. If he said black, I said white. But I didn't know one thing: when he does his sujood, does he keep his eyes open or does he shut them? Does he close his eyes? So I give my fatwa that when you're doing sujood, keep one eye open and one eye closed. That was the level of opposition that they had. Of course, we can't overlook the fact that there was a lot of envy and jealousy towards Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam as well. That it was very challenging for them to try to somehow gain popularity and fame through doing opposite to the norm. There's an Arabic saying, it says, Khalif tu'raf. Go against the flow, oppose, and you will become very, very popular and famous. It's simple. And a lot of people do that, by the way. What was that word, Ali? Cloud? Where's Ali? Where's Ali? Barra? What was the word, Ali? What are you doing in the kitchen? We have that in our world today, don't we? That people want to do really awkward things. People want to do really unorthodox things. People want to go against the flow. People want to challenge the status quo, right? Just so they can somehow become famous, or somehow, people share and click and things like that. Clickbait, is that what they call it? It's common in today's society as well, isn't it? Right? People are willing to do anything. Some people are willing to do anything just for the sake of likes or subscriptions. And anyone can do that. Anyone can do that. Here's so me right now. I've got maybe 6 subscribers. Let me say something that is unorthodox, right? I'll get 6,000 subscribers overnight, right? And that's how some people are. And unfortunately, because, remember what I said at the beginning of my talk, because we don't have a strong, some of us, unfortunately, don't have a strong foundation, we get sucked into this. we become followers of fame, and we get influenced by influencers who have no basis, who have no moral standards as well. Right? Since when is our choice of who we like and who we want to be like based on the number of followers or the number of likes or the number of subscribers that someone has? If you look at the Quran principle, it's always saying that majority are bad. أكثرهم للحق كارهون. Majority of people hate the haqq, or as Hassan would say, the haqq. So therefore, for us, it's never about opposing. It's never about trying to go against certain things. Who said that being traditional or being cultural is bad? A lot of us say, oh yeah, that's a traditional way, that's a cultural way. You know, now every person is a specialist in marriage, right? Oh yeah, I don't want to get married the traditional way. What's the traditional way? That you have to ride on a camel, mathalan. What's the traditional way? You're talking about arranged marriage because, you know, you've now hated this word because it's negatively used in modern society. The best marriage is an arranged marriage. The best marriage is an arranged marriage. Not love marriage. That's rubbish. And of course, we don't believe in forced marriage anyway, so that's batil and haram anyway. If someone says that I want to fall in love before I get married, then 100% they started everything with haram, and whatever starts with haram ends with haram. It won't last. Islam says love is built before marriage. No, you don't even know the person. After marriage. And that's why we need to rearrange our process of thinking as well. It's really important. It's really important. And so there's a lot of times where our Imam criticized these Madhahib, especially Abu Hanifa. Now question, what's the methodology that is used in Shi'i, Ithna Ashari, Twelver, Imami, Ja'fari fiqh? Number one is the Quran. That's the first source. Then why are you closing the door, Busi? Are you closing it? Open it just a little bit. What was I saying? What was I saying, Muntadhar? What was I saying, Maliki? What was I saying, Ya Hamdi? Good. Thank you. Is that what you were going to say, Sajjad? Good. Quran, obviously. Number two is the Sunnah. The Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, and the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That's what when we say the Sunnah, we mean the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and the Imams, and of course Fatima Zahra alayhim salam. In their qawl, in their statements, in their fi'l, in their actions, and in their taqreer, in their tacit approvals. Right? Then we have aql, reason, using your intellect, using your aql as a source of deriving laws. Of course, it needs to be done in a certain way. And then the fourth is ijma'. And ijma' means the consensus of our early ulama. you know that it's been hundreds and hundreds of years since the beginning of Islam, right? 1,400 years since the beginning of Islam. During this time, there have been a lot of books that were written, that were compiled, that were handed down from the time of our Imams to our early ulama that we don't have now, that we don't have. And therefore, when our early ulama spoke about something, right, it wasn't because they had their own kind of like, you know, personal opinion that they were enforcing onto religion. No, it was there for a reason. Let me give an example of beards. Having a beard for men, that our, you know, ulama, all of them say that it is according to ihtiyat wajib. Some say la wajib, absolutely. But in a lot of cases, according to ihtiyat wajib, you must have a beard. Of course, having a beard now in today's society is fashion. But just imagine you were living, I remember this very, very clearly, in the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s, you would not be able, we listening, boys? You would not be able to get a job if you had a beard. You would not be able to get a job if you had a beard. You had to always be clean shaven. Would you still have the beard if that was the case? That's why, you know, different times, different circumstances, you're always going to be facing certain challenges in how you are. So nowadays, all right, okay, we understand it's a fashion and things like that. Doesn't matter. You know, you're doing your bare minimum of wajib. That's really good. It's a part of your identity. It says that having a beard illuminates one's face and one's soul. It's a source of nur to have a beard. Very important to keep up to your Islamic kind of identity. Male and female. Females don't have beards, but a part of your identity. What is a part of a female's identity? Her hijab. Your hijab. But you look it up now. Google hijab. 95% of it is not hijab or modest clothing. 95% of it is not modest clothing. You know how many sisters say to me, Sheikh, we feel really awkward that we refuse to put makeup because all the girls around us are putting on makeup. I said, well, again, go back to the Quran and you would see that majority are this, majority are that, majority are this. You focus, even if you are the awkward one, even if you are the, what do they call them, black sheep one, you still do make sure that you keep on doing what it is that you are doing. A lot of us fall under the pressure as well. Why don't you do your eyebrows? They're too thick. Look at these guys, they're doing like nice khayat eyebrows and things like that these days. Very feminine. From the signs of Akhir al-Zaman is men behaving or dressing as women and women behaving or dressing as men. We've spoken about that topic a lot. No need for us to get into it any more than that. Sunnis have an addition to these four, right? One of them is called qiyas. And we are, in fiqh, we are completely against qiyas. Completely against qiyas. And the hadiths say that the first person that did qiyas, that compared, was Iblis. Right? Hamdi, start reading. Nasikh, Munsakh, Mansukh, sorry. These are the different, things that are a part of Quran. If you've been to our Ramadan programs, you know what they are. وَأَيَّامًا سِيرُوا, okay, it says سِيرُوا فِيهَا لَيَالِي وَأَيَّامًا آمِنِينَ. What does آمِنِينَ mean? Safely, right? So Abu Hanifa replied, yes, this is between Mecca and Medina. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam asked him, does that mean it's safe between Mecca and Medina to travel? All right. And of course, obviously, because of the highway robbers and things like that, the companions there, they said, no, it's not. So it can't be that. Carry on. فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا. And the same thing. Yes. Ibn al-Zubayr. All right. So basically, this is a conversation, as you picked up, a conversation happening between Imam al-Sadiq and Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa's, okay, I know this and I know that and I know this and I know that. And of course, no one can be at the level of our Imams as far as ilm and knowledge is concerned, because their knowledge was not from them. Who was the teacher of Imam al-Sadiq? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, right? Because he had inherited this from his forefathers, from Allah, whereas the others, they had to study and read. You chose to go to one of them. We chose to go to their teacher, to the source. Carry on. Haid? Of course, that's not the case. What's more important, this or that? If he said his answer was salah, okay, well, if salah was more important than fasting, why is it that a woman doesn't need to repeat those days for salah, but she has to repeat those days for siyam? Point here, right? You can't do qiyas. You can't compare one situation to another situation. You can't do that. You can't say blood is najis, okay, therefore mosquito blood is going to be najis. Each one has its own ruling. That's what qiyas means. Qiyas means I'm going to compare this law with this law and come up with an answer. Carry on. All right, anyway, carry on. What's more filthier, urine or semen? Well, if urine is more filthy, because in Sunni fiqh, in a lot of Sunni fiqh, they don't believe that semen is najis, right? Okay, but for urine, why is it that you don't need to do ghusl if urine is more najis, but for semen you need to, mathalan? Of course, this is where we answer this particular question that I just posed as well. Where did Imam al-Sadiq get his knowledge from? This is what Imam al-Sadiq says. Hadithi hadithu abi. Who was his father? Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. Wa hadithu abi hadithu jaddi. Who was his grandfather? Imam al-Sajjad. Wa hadithu jaddi hadithu al-Husayn. Wa hadithu al-Husayn hadithu al-Hasan. وحديث الحسن حديث أمير المؤمنين وحديث أمير المؤمنين حديث رسول الله وحديث رسول الله حديث قول الله عز وجل. So this is the chain of teachers, if we could say, that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam had. And you can't get better than that, right? That's why we, alhamdulillah, are proud followers of al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari. Unfortunately, as common as al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari was throughout history, it was only through the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah where al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari started to be rejected as an independent madhhab. Even until recently as well, until maybe 2 centuries ago or more, in Mecca there was a special place, a special minbar, a special mihrab for al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari as well, right? And that's why we despise the Salafi, Wahhabi, Ibn Taymiyyah ideology. We spoke about that just after Eid al-Fitr, didn't we? When we spoke about the evilness of takfiri mentality. And all these terrorist groups are a part of that kind of ideology. I've even got, until today, people still say, oh, you Shia kafir, you Shia kafir. Okay, why is it that Abu Hanifa can have his own opinion? A Shafi'i can have his own opinion. Abu Sufyan al-Thawri can have his own opinion. But Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq can't have his own opinion. Why is that? What gives them some superiority that only they can interpret Islam and anyone else, a non-Sunni, cannot interpret Islam? Very sad, actually. And that's why here in Imam al-Sadiq's statement here, he says, Inna wallah ma naqulu bi ahwa'ina wa la naqulu bi ra'yina. By Allah, we never say what we feel, or we never, our own kind of like what we are inclined in our desires to say, or we don't state our statements as far as our personal opinion is concerned. وَلَا نَقُولْ إِلَّا مَا قَالَ رَبُّنَا. Everything we say is what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And that's why al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari is so unique. Look at Google it yourself. Funny Wahhabi fatwas. You can't watch Mickey Mouse. You can't do this. This is kufr. You know how in the army they do this? That's kufr. Because you're not saying salamun alaykum. Right? All these weird, funny fatwas that, make absolutely no sense. Drinking bawl al-ba'ir, as they say, camel urine, because it will cure you from a lot of sicknesses. Rubbish like that. I was buying a dishtasha. I had to buy a dishtasha here. And I went to this place. Haydar kept on getting up. I recorded him. Kept saying, Ya Ali, Ya. When I'm saying, what are you doing, Haydar? Uskut, Haydar. Kept on saying, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. You're going to get me in big trouble. Anyway, the guy brings me out a dishtasha. It was like up to my shin. And I said, Yani, do you have something longer, brother? And he said, no, that's perfect. That's long enough. I said, no, I prefer it to be a little bit longer than this. And then the other guy looked at me really awkwardly. And bayin wadah, yani, that I want something over my ankles. under my ankles, over my ankles. Whereas they believe that no, you have to have it above your ankles. You should never wear something over your ankles. It has to always be above your ankles. These kind of things where I remember I had a big argument with someone right in front of Al-Kaaba Al-Musharrafa because I was taking a picture of the Holy Kaaba. He said, bid'ah, haram, this, that. I said, yeah, but you look at the, what's his name that you have, the ID that you have. Isn't that a surah? Yani, هذا bid'ah, and ana, yani, what I'm doing is not, that's not bid'ah. What I'm doing is a bid'ah. And then we kept on arguing, and then I said, يعني, you don't have a picture of Khadim al-Haramain? Yeah, of course I have a picture of Khadim al-Haramain. That's a bid'ah. That's why they have uqul, right? Fresh, never been used in their lives. Al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari is unique that it has the dynamics of using your intellect, of making sure that you accommodate to al-zaman wal-makan as well. You're living in this country, everything is based on capitalism. Yes, we understand that usury and riba and interest is haram, but then our ulama, they say, okay, well, if you're living in a country like this, there needs to be some kind of dynamics, some kind of flexibility. That's why ijtihad is so important. The uniqueness of al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari is the door of ijtihad is not closed, it's open. Whereas in Sunni fiqh, the door of ijtihad is closed. It's closed. After the four madhahib, there's no more ijtihad anymore. Whereas for us, it's open. During the absence of the imam, we need to make sure that we have someone who knows the dynamics. And that's why our maraji' taqleed go through so many, a minimum nowadays, a minimum of 60 years. A minimum of 60 years of studying for them to reach the level of marji'iyya. It's not something easy. And that's why when someone pop out of nowhere says, I'm a marji' taqleed and whatnot, have a big question mark on them. Big question mark on them. And there's many of them, unfortunately, out there. That's why I'm talking about taqleed again, because it's really important for us to understand the uniqueness of al-Madhhab al-Ja'fari. And we are also proud to say that what we do can be traced all the way back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have not allowed things to penetrate and enter into our faith due to the imposing of opinions made by others. You remember when I spoke about why was Hayya ala khair al-amal removed from adhan? And all these other things that unfortunately was practiced during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but then throughout some time they changed it. This is, of course, exactly why when it says this particular hadith from Ibn Abbas, لما أنزل الله تعالى, this following hadith, when this ayah, came down, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك خير البرية. Those who have faith and practice righteous deeds, they are the best of creation. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi looked at Imam Ali alayhi salam and said to him, they are you and your Shia. you and your followers. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين.